I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to the Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today is one in a series of conversations about the upcoming 5th anniversary of the Daily Memphian, and today, to that end, I'm joined by columnist and marketing guru, Dan Conaway. So stay with us for a conversation with Dan. Do you like to be referred to, Dan, as a marketing guru?
Not really.
Well, we're off to a great start.
An ancient ad man. How's that?
Yeah, ad man. I should have done ad man. Ad man because I do actually think of you more as a kind of a classic, ad man.
That's a dying breed.
Yeah,
I am one of those.
Right.
Yeah.
But you also write a column for us at the Daily Memphian, and it's funny how many people don't know it. We didn't mean to hide that fact, but you were integrally involved in the branding, the marketing, all kinds of the rollout. We spent way too much time together, you and me and Andy Cates, our board chair and friend. He'll be on the show and on this show for a full hour in a couple of weeks. I don't know when it's coming, but to talk about the 5th anniversary, which is crazy. September 18th.
It is.
2018. Years. Yeah. When did me or Andy or someone, when did you get wind that we were plotting this? Did one of us called you?
It was floating around out there in the ether for a while that you guys were talking about, because I talked to Andy about a number of things. I worked with Andy on his other adventures that he's been on, and of course with his dad on a number of things.
He's got that Winnebago Park is what I remember. Anyway, keep going.
And I flew with him one time too, and he paid very little attention to the instruments. It was an interesting flight, but
no comment. No comment on that one.
The first time I remember that we really talked about it seriously, I think Andy called me and not you about getting together at Crosstown, which when I think about it, it's just an incredibly appropriate place for that conversation, because we were talking about something brand new for the city that was needed and something that could be a model for the country if we pulled it off, and we were sitting in a place that did that. And at a table around the corner at French Truck, we talked about it the first time.
It's funny how many people actually often tell me, well, yeah, Daily Memphian's based in Crosstown. And it's this funny thing. I think it's partly because there's so many people, I mean, me very much included, Chris Harrington, Keely Brewer, other writers who work there, like work in the coffee shop or work in the common spaces. And then
there's there all the time.
Yeah, right. And then there's just this sort of sense that somehow maybe we'd be attached to Crosstown, because I think sometimes because people, we never said, and as far as I know, Andy never will, who all the original donors are, but he always makes the joke, but it wasn't my brother Staley. And obviously Staley Cates was integral to making Crosstown and that whole renovation happen. But so I think there's this association people have with that. So you did the branding. So I remember we started meeting. We'd often meet at Andy's office down on Main, and basically we would yell at each other. It would be three of us, three grown men, talking really fast, drinking a lot of coffee, and yelling at each other. And we did that hour after hour.
Andy didn't do nearly as much yelling. I mean,
who did more?
Andy basically did sort of refereeing, I think. You and I did most of the yelling.
Oh, I remember that. Right, I remember Andy. I remember being very calm.
Well, you and I have other things in common. We're both writers, and we both have we both know how to take a concept or a vision and then articulate that in some way. So you and I were. We were doing what my two brothers were also writers. We were doing what we did a lot, which was we would get in an argument. We would agree about something, and then we would get in an argument about the point to which we agreed, or how much we actually agreed or disagreed.
No,
and you and I were doing a lot of that.
There was a lot of that, but Andy was in that too. And I remember the one, and I tell this story all the time. Is we were all of us yelling at each other good naturedly. I mean, but it was just, and finally Andy goes, Dan, we agree with you. We agree with you. We are all agreeing. And you said, yeah, but you're agreeing for the wrong reason. And you just kept going at us about, I don't even remember what. I remember like me or Andy got up and walked out of the room. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. But from that came what was kind of that and all kinds of things, which I'm curious how you reflect on this. We've done lots of things really well in the 5 years. We've done lots of dumb stuff. It has been imperfect. I think we've always constantly gotten better. One thing we really did right was the rollout. It partly because it was partly luck, But it was very much, I mean, to give you full credit, it was very much the branding and the marketing rollout. But how do you reflect back on that?
Well, if you have the right brand, you're going to come back to it a lot, because you're going to come back to it as the heart and base of who you are.
Yeah.
And it's more than a logo, although the logo's good, and it's more than a positioning statement, although obviously because I wrote it, I love it. But I mean,
That's
the positioning
place.
statement about truth in place, I think, is something that that's at the heart of what you're really trying to do, because it's about the heart of journalism and reporting, but it's also about this place and the understanding of where this place is in the universe and where it is, and it's the people that live here and what makes it a different place and what makes it work and not work. And that's what you do every day. And, we reflected on naming it too. We wanted to have we had discussions about a number of names. People don't realize that.
I remember being in the room and you
we
had
went over a
cards.
lot of them, but we always came back to the one we really wanted to begin with was one that I brought back but was already taken, and that was for the hotel, the Memphian, which is what it became, but that name was taken. So.
Which oddly
we could not talk the Loeb family out of giving it to us.
Yes.
Although the right name for that hotel is the Overton, but that's another discussion. But we did get to the concept of the Daily Memphian, because that's an old school newspaper type name, and that's what we wanted to do, is reflect the old school grounding of what journalism is with the brand new way to do it, because the print model isn't working now, didn't work then, and will never work again, because it's too much money and too much time spent on the process rather than on what you're doing and what you can do. And so the model is, can you do this as a digital newspaper, but really be a newspaper and not just another digital reporting service or another news outlet that does that? We were an honest-to-God newspaper. And we can call it a newspaper. It's a digital publication, but
I still do.
Newspaper makes it. And so the name felt like that, but it also took us forward. Of course, Memphian is in it, and that's an important thing. And daily's an important thing too, because you really are there every day.
The other thing about that was, and I say this to people when I get, once a month or something like that, I'm at publishing conferences or I'm on some sort of Zoom thing, and people start asking about the story. And one of the things I say is exactly what you just said about the Daily Memphian. That was people. There were some people like, well, daily, it's the internet. It's 24/7. I know, but we need to. The people we need to reach are the traditional news readers. We need them to come over, and they all want a print edition. But we're not going to be able to give them a print edition. But we need to do things like call it the Daily Memphian, have the morning email come out at 4 a.m. Like you used to get your newspaper on your doorstep at 4 a.m. The afternoon edition, 4 p.m., like an afternoon newspaper. And then even the design, and I remember working with the design firm, and they were great, it was Simple Focus, based here in Memphis. And the programming also was based here in Memphis, Clear Function. I remember, they kind of were like, okay, they thought we'd want something that's really new, kind of looking like modern look. And we were like, well, we don't want to look like ye old online newspaper. Right, but one thing was, and I remember having this conversation with multiple people, it was like, no, we're doing a serif font. We're not doing a sans serif font. All the studies show a sans serif font is more readable on your screen. I said, yeah, but it doesn't look like a newspaper.
No, it does.
And that was
doesn't mean you have to go to American typewriter, but you have to have something.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And there were all these little choices that we made that we did do right, that we really connected with,
and it's
people
easy
and
to
felt
read.
Comfortable.
It's
and
easy to read.
It is.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but one of my favorite things, one of those little things that I wrote for it was, if this bothers you and you want to get used to it, just have your dog bring you your iPad. Right. I mean, things like that, because people do want to roll out, fold out, stand in front of, sit behind, look at a newspaper. But I think we're getting past that.
Yeah.
Some people will never get past it, but the world out there really wants to be able to do what we're doing. But still, it feels to me, I think, with the success that you've had and led the team here to do, is it looks and feels like a newspaper. It's reporting. I mean, you've got a lead story. You can follow You can follow down and read it easily. And then you've got editions. There's going to be an update, and they're going to be regular updates. And the digital magic is you can update that as many times as you need to. When you got a breaking story, it's instant.
Yeah.
And the 24/7 thing, that's just a cliche now. I mean, daily is 24/7. It lasts 24 hours and 7 days. I mean, so, it still works. Both ways it works.
Right.
Because the news changes.
Yeah. I should remind everyone, we're talking to Dan Conaway about the upcoming fifth anniversary of the Daily Memphian, September 18th. It'll be one of a series of conversations we will do. A couple months ago, 2 months ago, I think now, we talked to Otis Sanford a bit about the anniversary and about his career. So if you're into this sort of thing, and we also talked with Jeff Calkins, I think probably 6 weeks ago, a bit about the anniversary. We talked about some other stuff with him on that as well. Let me do some housekeeping real quick, and we'll get back to more about that rollout and the buses and the come home, and there's a bunch of things that it is interesting. We can talk about all the things we did wrong, but a reminder that the Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. It's focused on the community, arts, culture, and everything in between. It is not just a radio show, though. It's one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Behind the Headlines podcast. Bill Dries and sometimes Sam Hardiman do a politics podcast on the record. We have Soundbites, our food podcast that I'll talk more about in a minute. That also airs here on WYXR every Thursday at 11. All of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get the WYXR shows. That's this show, and the Soundbites. That's available at wyxr.org or on the WYXR app. That app is great, as is the website, because it includes all the talk shows on WYXR. It includes archives of all the music shows, so it's a great way to keep up with what's going on in WYXR. Also, I should say that WYXR is nonprofit, listener-supported radio, so support by becoming a member. You can go to the site. You can sign up for all kinds of – you can donate just one time, or you can become a member and get lots of benefits. I should also say, if you're not a subscriber to the Daily Memphian, please do subscribe. We're also a nonprofit news site or newspaper, or whatever we want to call it today. So if you're not a subscriber, do become a subscriber of the Daily Memphian. As I think I mentioned, we've got other folks from the Daily Memphian coming on. Andy Cates, board chair, my friend, one of the co-founders of this place. He'll be coming on soon. We'll talk to him for an hour, and we'll see what the two of us can remember of why in the world we decided to do this and looped all these other people into it. We've also got three key folks from the newsroom, Mary Casciola, Holly Whitfield, and Jane Donahoe coming on to talk about just changes. And they intentionally, partly they're coming on because they weren't here at the start, and I wanted to kind of get their perspectives. And Holly just joined us this year. I mentioned Behind the Headlines that we do with the folks over at WKNO every Friday at 7:00, also as a podcast. And we have been doing a series of one-on-one interviews with top mayoral candidates. We've done Michelle McKissick, J.W. Gibson, Van Turner, Karen Camper. We've got coming up Paul Young, Floyd Bonner, and Willie Harrington over the next month or so, that we'll do one-on-ones with all of them. And we also did a mayoral debate with WKNO, what seems like 100 years ago now, but I think it was probably 2 weeks ago, give or take. Yeah. Last week as we tape this. Yeah. But we're holding this a week, so don't make any news, Dan. That mayoral debate, if you missed it, is available. You can just search for WKNO on YouTube, or you can search for Daily Memphian, or you can go to WKNO.org, and I think the video of it is there. I mentioned, we're going to take a left turn here for a second. This is the first show we've done since the passing of Jennifer Biggs. I can't really talk a whole lot about it. It is still so sad and raw for me personally, and for Natalie here, who's one of her great friends, and a friend of yours as well, Dan. But all of us were at her funeral service yesterday, again, as we record this. We're still reeling, but I don't. I can talk about it for 25 minutes, but it'd be really, really, really sad, and I don't want to do that today. But I imagine we will at some point. But I also want to.
She was
market.
She was one of a kind, and so you don't replace a Jennifer. The world had Jennifer when the world had Jennifer, and the world was lucky for it. She was so approachable and so kind and so intense about what she did, but she never met anybody that she couldn't talk to. Yeah. And if you talked to her for 5 minutes, you thought you'd known her all your life.
I know.
So that was something that made people open up to her, and the beat that she had, that was incredibly important. It was great.
It's just, and it's, I used to think 60 was old, and now it doesn't seem that old to me. And so it's just too much. I will point out so many great.
To some of us, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So many great obits and columns that we did, that folks over at the Commercial Appeal who worked with her when she was there for all that time did. One that I'll highlight, Michael Donahue wrote. I don't know how I got through it. It was a beautiful, beautiful tribute to her and obit in the Memphis Flyer. It's over on their site. It's funny, and it just sort of captures so much. And it was, it was funny to see him yesterday, and he's just a funny guy.
Sure was.
We'll talk about, the founding again. We'll go back to Daily Memphian. We'll go back to the marketing. One of the things you came up with was the simple marketing line. As we the history, as I remember it, was Andy and I had been talking for a year before, like in 2017 and even earlier, and then got really serious in the summer of 2017 about, could we pull the money together, the people, and the whole concept to do this? And so there's a ton of research that went on. We officially formed May 1st of 2018. I was employee number one. Jason Israel, our CTO, who I think we really should get Jason and Kate on. I actually think it'd be hysterical and very interesting, because
Jason had a ride.
Oh my God. We hired Jason May 1st, and we launched September 18th, and we started from scratch in terms of staff, in terms of marketing, in terms of a name, in terms of the whole website, and the whole technical back end got written over the course of that summer, which was nuts that we did that. And we started hiring people. We started, and what we knew we needed to do. And I tell people who call or want to, hear about how we were launched and how we hired staff. I said, well, we hired all the staff and told them they couldn't work. And Jennifer was very much one of those, and Chris Harrington and Jeff Calkins. And then over the course of the summer, we kept hiring Otis, and said, yeah, you're just gonna be on the beach. I mean, literally don't work until we launch. And so for some of them, it was months. It was a very odd experience. But you came up as we got you involved. There was the Come Home branding, and we put up, and I remember this as your idea. It was a very simple page at once, because the word was getting out. People who cared knew, like, where's Jeff going? Where's Jennifer going? What's going on? There's news about this. There's something's happening. We didn't want to announce, but it was kind of good, and it built this anticipation. And when we did do our announcement in the lobby of the FedEx Forum, the press conference kind of thing, and we had a website up, dailymemphian.com, and all it said was come home. Splash page. To learn more, give us your email. And we gathered thousands of emails just from that. I mean, we didn't really advertise it yet. And then somewhere in there,
as they say, and literally, I still have the T-shirt. So, right.
The Come Home T-shirt?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right. With a logo on the front and Come Home on the back.
Yeah. That's right. We still have some of those. I forgot that those, that's right. Because I don't look at the back of mine. The buses. And I remember being in some meeting with the three of us yelling at each other, and you said, and we got to do buses, big bus wraps. It was much louder than that. And you said, we're going to put, Jennifer, and we're going to put Otis and Jeff, and you, Eric, we're going to put you on the side of a bus, and we're going to drive them all over the place, because we got to tell people, come home. That's all we're going to say. Come home. dailymemphian.com. And it worked.
And recognizable people. Jeff Calkins, too.
Yeah, Jeff. If I didn't say Jeff, I meant to say Jeff. But Jeff, obviously the most recognizable.
It was just about recognition and identity. The buses just go everywhere. They're rolling billboards. So that was, and the simple message works.
And gave all four of us the just, unique and memorable experience of seeing ourselves on buses. And I remember one time seeing a bus come. I was stopped at a red light, and I saw the bus come in, and I thought it was Jeff, because they were kind of cool black and white. And I was like, that's me. And it was moving so slowly that I was stopped. I had time to get my phone out, put on video, and record the video of this bus going around the corner to send it to my kids, and then also to my high school buddies that we, all, and that was really, really, really humbling, because the responses were not oohs and ahs from my children, or I think my daughter was just like vomiting, because she was a senior. She was like, my friends are going to see that, Dad. And then my high school and junior high friends said things that I can't repeat on radio. And it was good. It brought my ego back.
That part was, you're not going to keep that up. But part of that was, that's the price you pay. You have to, but also the message we did too on the back of those buses to prove how that works. We just put the little bitty thing on the bus, on the rear of the bus, that said, I don't know if you remember that or not. It just said, come home. Yeah. Had the logo and the URL. And that works like crazy because people are stopped at, behind buses all the time. And there it was, come home and the Daily Memphian.
Yeah.
Because the Daily Memphian itself, the name works well enough to be a message when it signs off. So that worked. I had some other names I really liked. I still have the URLs. I'm going to sell them to somebody.
when somebody launches a competitive site,
I spent $9 on each one of them. I mean, come on, I got to get
renewing.
it back.
Without, I mentioned the CA and John Bifus and Jennifer Chandler wrote really nice things about Jennifer Biggs this week, and I saw Mark Russell at the funeral, and Mark Russell and I talked email and from time to time and so on. He's the editor over a number of states, but still including the CA. And it came across wrong sometimes, and that was my fault, if nothing else, that we were really attacking the CA. It was more about their their ownership and changes that were being made. It was about the Tennessee network, which they've pulled back on that branding. But that I always tell people, and they've done that branding. I think they've done a Michigan one. I think they've done a Florida network. That for me was not for me personally, but that is what I remember being the final straw. Before May, when we got funded, when we were formed, it was people were so mad when they looped the Memphis Commercial Appeal, which was a beloved paper, and it's still beloved by a lot of people, and they have great folks over there. I'm not beating.
I have huge history,
and you have huge history, which I want to get to. But for me, it was that Tennessee network was the final straw, because suddenly we were getting top 10 rooftop bars in Nashville. We were getting Knoxville Crime of the Week.
It wasn't ours.
Yeah.
It wasn't ours, and no matter how much they have to fight that every day. I understand that from their point of view too, but the truth is they don't make their own decisions. They make most of them, but they still have to answer to somebody somewhere else, and that's not us. It's just not us ultimately.
Yeah. I just remember that,
and it was so us before.
Yeah, right. That the Memphis Commercial Appeal was. Yeah. Before we go to your history there, is that how you remember the lay of the land? I mean, that there were the cutting, and the cutting was really aggressive. I mean, I think it was the spring of 2017 when they cut a third of the newsroom. It might have been 16, but I think it was 17. And that was a trigger for me and Andy to really get serious and talk about it and talk to other people.
And it showed.
Yeah.
And it showed instantly.
Yeah.
I mean, they were filling with,
right.
With USA Today stories and, and other things that were coming in, and it got smaller.
Yeah.
On Monday it would blow away if they put it in your.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it is segueing, like years ago before COVID, I did a really great, not for anything.
And we shouldn't be doing so much of that right now. I mean, it's not. It was just a time. It was the right time for us to be doing something.
That's what I try to
claim to claim journalism back,
right,
on a local basis.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes here, but I did an interview which should be in the podcast feed. You can search for it, with David Waters and Mark Paraschia.
Sure.
Years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, because before it was probably 4 years ago, and they talked about how they both came up through the commercial appeal bureaus in rural Mississippi. I mean, Jennifer Biggs came from DeSoto. It was her first, maybe Fayette County.
The CA was God for the region.
Yeah.
I mean, journalism. Yeah. I mean, that was it.
And your history with it is
I've got 3 members of my family in the Tennessee Newspaper Hall of Fame. I mean, my grandfather won a Pulitzer Prize for fighting the Ku Klux Klan as an editorial cartoonist, part of the editorial staff. Won that Pulitzer in 1923. His son, Kyle Alley, was my uncle, who was the editorial cartoonist for decades at the Commercial Appeal. Frank Algren was the editor of the Commercial Appeal. He was my other uncle and my Uncle Kyle's boss. My mother-in-law was the society editor for the Commercial Appeal in the 1930s. Oh, wow. She was in her 20s when she was the society editor. You could not be married and be the society editor. So when she got married in 1937, she had to quit. And we've been trying to figure that out. I think it's because women were so secondary to whatever their husbands were doing that when you married, you got into society, evidently.
Yeah.
Then you couldn't be objective about covering society because you were then a member. It just was so screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history there. When I was a little boy, I used to spend a lot of time, watching my uncle draw, and then my two brothers and I all worked at the Commercial Appeal in summers, and I mean, it was part of the family.
Yeah.
Very much part of the family. I was scared to death of my Uncle Frank.
Maybe that's a different
looked
story.
like a bulldog.
Well, a couple minutes left here. What else? I mean, marketing.
Yeah.
You're a marketing guru. I mean, you're
There
an
you go again.
ad man. You're a classic ad man.
Actually, what I am is a copywriter.
Okay.
And everything
That's how
else,
you came up.
everything else I've done is to feed my family beyond being a copywriter in Memphis.
Yeah.
So I've had ad agencies and I've had a lot of creative services, but I still love the creative process, the coming up with it and making it. I've told people before that what you do in advertising is simply massage the mind and make it release money. So, I mean, it's an interesting way to make a living, and it's a lot of fun. And so I've had a lot of fun.
Do I remember you were in 100 North Main for a while?
Yep. First job I had was an agency in 100 North Main building in the 1970s.
And you were telling it was more
it
Mad Men than we should probably talk
Oh,
about.
absolutely. It was also a building full of ambulance chasing lawyers. Every time a fire truck went by, the elevator get jammed. I mean, you couldn't get it was a crazy building too.
Yeah.
It was a great building then, but I mean, had the worst parking garage in the history of the world.
Still
full
does.
of people. It still does, and it was just full of all sorts of interesting people.
Yeah.
And it was a madman business. The people that were in charge of the agencies then were of that era. I mean, it absolutely. And the first season of Mad Men was dead on. I mean, after that it got too soap opera, but it was that first season was.
Yeah.
That was what those people were like. That's who I worked for.
What with a minute left? What's a favorite column that you've written for us in 5 years?
Oh,
couple that come to mind.
I don't know. My Christmas column is a favorite.
Yeah,
and I run the same column every Christmas. The week of Christmas, I'll run that same column because it is a quintessential Memphis story, and I loved writing it. And so I've run that a long time. But actually, I wrote that when I was working at the Daily News.
Yeah, the old Daily
columnist,
News.
and came over to. So as far as the Daily Memphian is concerned, there've been
a lot.
A lot of them. One thing I will say that one thing that happened is that Otis Sanford and I put a book out.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's happened since then. And that was definitely a product of being together at the Daily Memphian and getting to know each other much better. And so we put out a collection of our columns. And
those ads we did, you ran that. Willie Bearden videotaped a bunch of people at the four-way and various places. And
right.
Yeah, that's right. That
just the idea of getting together in Memphis places. We went to Gibson Donuts. We went to the four-way.
My favorite column of yours, I mean, there have been a bunch. But
Arcade.
One that comes to mind is the one you tell the story of being a high school kid out driving, maybe drinking a little bit, and you get pulled over, and the cop kind of escorts you home, or just sort of make sure you get taken care of. And then you said, I used to always tell this. I'm going to do a poor job of this, but I used to always tell the story, and it was kind of a funny cocktail story and a funny joke story from childhood. But now I see it in a whole new light because I was a white male.
That's what I was writing about. Was white privilege.
It was a really powerful column.
For the listeners here, a very quick version of that was I was speeding in my mother's convertible coming home from a date, and the cop got behind me. So I decided, with the wisdom that 16-year-olds have, is to run from the cop. Yeah. Which was not a good idea. And I pulled into a driveway so that he would just go riding by like they do in television.
And he didn't.
He pulled in right behind me in the driveway. He walked up to me sitting in the convertible, and he said, "Son, if you're trying to hide in the driveway, you might want to take your foot off the brake." And then he talked to me for a bit, and instead of giving me a ticket, he followed me home to my parents' house, which was fully a mile and a half from there. Yeah. And I'm going to finish this quickly because this wasn't in the column, but I think he's not going to mind. The driveway I pulled into was Jack Bell's. Because I knew Marty, he was in my class in high school, and I knew where that house was. And it was curvy driveway, and I thought he wouldn't see me, and he did. Yeah. And then the Bells family never said a word about that. And then later on, I worked for Jack opening Peabody. So I mean,
that's right,
that
but
was
it's a
great.
really good column about white privilege.
But
I mean, it
that
just
would
is.
never, if I had been a black kid, that never would have happened.
No.
That never would have happened.
Last question. I always try to ask people: first concert you ever attended?
First concert I ever attended?
First musical concert you ever attended?
Probably the Young Rascals in college.
Huh. Here in Memphis?
No, Knoxville.
Knoxville. That's right. That's right. The Young Rascals. Good. That's a good.
Now,
one.
I went to a lot of stuff, smaller stuff here.
Yeah.
I went to. We stole somebody's parents' car. That was a great. I love that column too. We went to Club Paradise to see Muddy Waters live.
Yeah.
And we went to Club Paradise, and 4 kids. Only one of them had a driver's license, and one of them was 14. I was 15, and we walked. We were the only white kids in Club Paradise.
Yeah.
And we were adopted.
Yeah.
Passed around by table to table, and we had a wonderful time. It was Howling Wolf and Muddy Waters live at Club Paradise. We'd seen the poster, so we backed a car out of a driveway and went down there. We had to find it, and that was a wonderful experience. That's not possible. That would not be possible today either.
All right, Dan Conaway, thanks for memories on of the 5th anniversary. That's all the time we have this week. If you missed any of the show, you can get the full episode on the Daily Memphian site, WYXR, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.